Welcome to this edition of the Barefoot Lawyer Reports. I'm William Saunders. I'm the director of the Center for Human Rights at the Catholic University of America, and I'm a human rights lawyer. With us today is Chen Guangcheng, the Barefoot Lawyer himself. Welcome, Guangcheng.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And we have a special guest for this podcast, who is Peter Tazi, who I believe is at the University of Virginia, Peter?
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech.
Yes.
What year
Yeah.
are you in school?
I'm currently a senior.
A senior, okay.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the developments regarding Cardinal Zen of Hong Kong. Peter, what made you interested in this issue?
Well, so this past summer, I was an intern at the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, and working alongside Olivia Enos, my supervisor. We were tracking the developments of the Cardinal Zen case, and this was in May. And so when news broke out of Cardinal Zen being charged with the conspiracy to collude with foreign forces, as the authorities put it, for his involvement in the 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund, we saw the need to write something about this. And also, I am a Catholic as well, so this definitely hit close to home.
Yeah, I want to mention that another, I guess she was a fellow there in the spring, was one of my students, and we did a podcast with her, Jillian Richards. So I'm sure that we will link to that if anyone wants to follow up, because we talked about some religious liberty issues on the call with her, and having to do with the imprisonment of a pastor and some of the persecution there. But returning to this Cardinal Zen situation, why don't you tell us what you learned and what you wrote about?
Of course. So Cardinal Zen is also known as the new conscience of Hong Kong. So he's just, really just this amazing figure in China and Hong Kong. And he's been extremely critical of the Chinese Communist Party's persecution against Christians. He's also been very critical of the China-Vatican deal, the one that was first agreed upon in 2018, renewed in 2020, and then renewed again this past fall in October 2022. Regarding the Vatican-China deal, it was made in private, so it is unclear as to what was specifically discussed. However, what we do know is that in 2018, the deal was strongly supported by Pope Francis and Vatican Secretary of State Pietro Parolin to create a medium for dialogue between the Vatican and China. Their intent was also to ameliorate divisions between the underground church and the Catholic Patriotic Association. And with this, the Vatican also recognized 7 excommunicated bishops who were previously selected by the Chinese government. However, Cardinal Zen had been sounding the alarm that this would kill and sell out the underground church. He also didn't trust Parolin, one of the architects of the deal, because he considered Parolin a political man and not so much a man driven by faith. Additionally, what I also found out too is that before the deal was struck in 2018, Cardinal Zen also attempted to meet with Pope Francis in Rome, but he was reportedly turned away.
Hey, Peter, let's pause there a second, because I want to bring in Guangcheng.
Of course.
Because Guangcheng can tell us what many Americans won't know, which is, Guangcheng, tell our listeners what the Chinese Communist Party said, or maybe it passed a law after the deal was concluded with the Vatican.
Yes. Before they have agreement with Vatican, the Communist Party promised Pope Francis they will prepare the names and send the names to Vatican to let the Pope decide who will become the cardinal in mainland China. But later, the Communist Party make a law, said we can do anything about the Catholic ourselves, and so looks like the Communist Party stopped the agreement with Vatican. So I think we should push Vatican and all the Catholics to stand up to support Chinese people. So
Yeah. So let's go back to Peter. Peter, pick us up with what happened with Cardinal Zen. Let's focus on that.
Yeah, of course. So what happened was back in May, he was charged with these trumped up charges, and I guess on the record, the charges made against him were his involvement with the 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund. So this was the ostensible reason, but I'm very sort of suspect about this, and I do think it has to relate to Cardinal Zen's outspokenness of the Chinese Communist Party and religious persecution in China and Hong Kong. And so that happened in May, and then this past fall he was convicted. So very recently, he was convicted for not registering the 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund with the government, and after that, Cardinal Zen and the other four democracy activists appealed this with the High Court. And I just want to go back to one point that Mr. Chen brought up about sort of the CCP installing bishops and kind of going against the terms of the agreement, at least what we know about the agreement. And a few weeks ago, the Vatican came out with a statement expressing surprise and regret over the CCP's installation of an auxiliary bishop in Jiangxi, which is a diocese not recognized by the Vatican. So it doesn't seem, it doesn't seem very surprising that the CCP would do this.
Okay, so when we look at this, the big picture is Cardinal Zen was convicted, and I understand a fine was imposed.
Yes.
There's no jail time. As I understand it, it's not a conviction under what Guangqin calls the evil law. It was instead a conviction under a colonial era law, correct?
As far as I understand, yes.
Okay, so the big picture of this is the Chinese Communist Party has been moving against Hong Kong for many years, trying to crush the democracy there. We have had many podcasts on this, and we had Guangqin give a human rights lecture at Catholic University, which you can find on our website, which is catholic.edu/CHR for Center for Human Rights, and many other things we've done to focus attention on this. And of course, everybody will know, I hope, about the persecution also of Jimmy Lai, the publisher of Apple Daily. And there's an excellent film that's just coming out about him called The Hong Konger. But this is part of an overall effort by the Chinese Communist Party to crush democracy in Hong Kong. And parentheses, I'm a human rights lawyer, and this is contrary to the terms of the treaty they're bound by, so it's illegal under international law anyway. But as part of their strategy to stifle democracy in Hong Kong, which, by the way, I hope everybody can see, this is a perfect example of what the Chinese Communist Party thinks about democracy. And don't be naive about whether you can have democracy under the Chinese Communist Party, because what they're doing in Hong Kong shows you cannot. But anyway, they go after Cardinal Zen because he's one of the most outspoken people in Hong Kong, along with Jimmy Lai and some others. And they're using, the point is not what law he was convicted under, but they're using a colonial era law to strangle democracy. So it's what we in America would call selective prosecution. They're going to, in other words, they're going to find any weapon they can to silence his voice. And he's been very prescient. In fact, I did want to mention that I've met with him myself in Hong Kong. I was there, but it was about a decade ago. meeting with democracy and human rights people, and also met with Cardinal Zen and his right-hand man. He's somebody that's been highly respected. I mean, I've been involved in this work about China and the Communist Party in Hong Kong for over 20 years. And in that entire time, Zen has been a key figure. So silencing of him or trying to silence him is an important goal of the Communist Party. So with that in mind, I want to ask Guangchen if he has any comments about what the Communist Party is trying to do about Cardinal Zen and even about Jimmy Lai or about others.
So about Jimmy Lai, the Communist Party tried to put him in prison just because Hong Kong government request to Beijing to tell them allow Jimmy Lai use the lawyer from London or not. Until now, the Communist Party didn't give them the precise answer, so they don't have the result. And another thing is just this Monday, another activist in Hong Kong, she is a lawyer and is a journalist. Before the Communist Party said she encouraged the people to go to street to protest to support Tiananmen Square, but that protest didn't get allowed from the police station. So the Communist Party tried to put her in prison. First, the Communist Party have a decision in the local court, but later the middle court changed. This Monday they said, okay, no problem for her. I hope in the future we can work with the people who stand with the rule of law, not just listen to the Communist Party, to give the activists in Hong Kong more freedom.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for listeners to consider. Guangchen's one of his main themes and what he talks about is that what is wonderful about America and about any true democracy is that you have the rule of law. And the rule of law means that the law binds everybody, whether you're powerful or whether you're weak, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're a Communist Party member or you're not a Communist Party member. And of course, the rule of law is what does not exist in China under the CCP. So what we need to do is to try to help the Hong Kongers to use the rule of law so that they won't have their human rights crushed by really lawless judges and lawyers. And there's some hope of that, as he just pointed out with this journalist. So all is not lost in Hong Kong. We have to keep fighting. And as we said, Jimmy Lai and others, we have to keep the pressure on the Communist Party, which means we have to put pressure on our government here in America to put pressure on the Communist Party to allow the rule of law to truly operate in Hong Kong and to have just outcomes in any proceedings that concern Jimmy Lai or Cardinal Zen or anybody else. Peter, is there anything else? I think we're going to come to the end of this podcast pretty soon. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think critically too, the Vatican should take a tougher stance on China. I know their big agenda has been to create a dialogue between the Vatican and China, but I think especially with the rising persecution against Christians in China and Hong Kong, it is important that Pope Francis comes out and voices support for the faithful and to be direct and deliberate in his messaging. So
yeah, and for those that maybe don't know anything about this, there's been in China for a long time, there was what's called underground church, which was unofficial church, and officially recognized church, and this was both for Protestants and Catholics. And and again, I've been involved in this for over 20 years, and the issue has always been, from a Catholic perspective, what should the Vatican do vis-a-vis these churches? Because in some ways, some would say the underground churches, the unofficial churches, have been the most faithful, and they've insisted on their loyalty to Rome and adherence to Catholic teaching, whereas some of the official is always under pressure to change their doctrine to conform with Communist Party ideas. And again, I just mentioned, but as the Christian churches, they're having things like retranslating the Bible to make it more consistent with communist views and the ideas of Chairman Xi. And they have pictures of Chairman Xi up in the front of the church. They have, at Christmas time, which we are right in, they even sing songs or carols in church that praise Cardinal Xi. So you can see why unofficial churches don't want to be involved in that. Now it is delicate diplomatic situation, but the point is that for 20 years, over 20 years, the Vatican is trying to decide how to minister to those two flocks, and also, thereby to help China. And this recent agreement, which Peter and Guangchen have been discussing, has been heavily criticized. And it seems like the Vatican now may be realizing that you just can't trust Chinese Communist Party. Guangchen, do you have any more comments?
Yeah, I think now I just want to let our listener know. So we live the Western place. We have more space to do something to help them. So we should join hands to give the Communist Party the pressure anywhere, like Wall Street or UN or another countries like that. If the Communist Party continue to destroy any democracy, the rule of law, and freedom of speech, we should let them know we will stand up and fight back.
Yes, so the more pressure you give, the more chance you have for success against the Chinese Communist Party. So I want to thank Peter for being our guest on the podcast. And I want to invite those who listen to subscribe to the Barefoot Lawyer podcast, which you can do easily on our website and etc. And also visit our Center for Human Rights website, where you'll find lots of information about Guangchen and about our recent and continuing activities against the Chinese Communist Party and to try to promote democracy and human rights, which is at catholic.edu/CHR, and that CHR is for Center for Human Rights, catholic.edu/Center for Human Rights. We look forward to talking to you next time.